Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Welcome to stage 2, where it's all happening, I hear. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Where's my clicker? Here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project called Concordium, a new Layer 1 blockchain we're talking about. And that sounds pretty tedious, I think. There's lots of new Layer 1 blockchains around. There are lots of people talking about ID base in a permissionless blockchain. And I want to think about why we're doing this, why we're here today, and where did it all begin. In our world, many of us came from this white paper, Satoshi's white paper, which we read way back in the day, and we talked about the peer-to-peer version of electronic cash, allowing online payments from one party to another without going through a financial institution. And what was the attraction of that back then? It wasn't just that it was private. That wasn't really the point. The point, it was not going through a financial institution, because financial institutions get in the way. They cause cost, they don't necessarily add value, they give complications, and they give censorship. And we don't necessarily like all that. And the censorship is coming from groups like this. This is a group of regulators we see today. They're standing in the way of that vision as we see it. This is the Sri Lankan Board of Regulators, which is a nice, diverse group of people, as you see, all thinking the same way with the same history. And in Europe, we're a long way from Sri Lanka, but we're moving into something, MiCA, the Market in Crypto Asset Regulation. There's 5,400 people in Paris writing crypto asset regulation today. 5,400 people. And they're beginning, and on this chart, which you can find on the internet, you can't read it up here, but they're asking every single functionality of the new financial system to be regulated just like the old one. And that's great. And why are they doing it? Are they doing it to stop us? Are they doing it to stop shadowy supercoders? Nah, not really. They don't really hate us. They don't really hate supercoders. They have a job to do. And we don't like the SEC, right? Or maybe we do. But they talk about different things, because the mission of the SEC is to protect investors. What the regulators want to do is protect investors, protect the consumer against cheats, protect the consumer against themselves. And they want to promote this market environment, this is from their own mission statement, worthy of the public's trust. They want a financial system we can trust. And that's great. So how do we build trust? How do we build trust indeed? We build trust through ID. We build trust through identity. We build trust through knowing who we're dealing with, knowing who the counterparty is. And in the blockchain world, we have to build trust on the protocol itself and what you're doing with it. So in Concordium, we've run up a new blockchain. We launched the mainnet back in May last year. Various key aspects of that, and you can read all about it somewhere else. Identity at the protocol layer, a sharding solution, smart contract solution that we all know, fast, secure consensus, varying in finalization time depending on the condition of the network, for example. Stable transaction fees, something we all hate on Ethereum. Why are we paying $180 yesterday for transactions, for minting, when you should be paying a cent? Proof of stake, of course, energy efficient. An ID, which we're going to talk more about now. We have 3 different components. And I draw this little picture here because I'll bring this out. This is the university in Denmark, the University of Aarhus, where they've been researching into cryptography and network security for hundreds of years. Well, hundreds of years, no, but tens of years, you can say. Our CTO in Concordium, he was one of the original designers of zero-knowledge proof concepts. His work is used in some of the protocols today, not our protocol, but others you'll know. Zero-knowledge proof is a really important component of cryptography, which, when I went to school, it didn't exist. This was sort of founded in the beginning of the 2000s, and if you're older than that, you didn't even know that it existed. It's kind of weird. We have something we call global ID, which I'll get to in a second, a little bit more, and something called identity objects. How do these combine to give trust in a financial system that a regulator can like? In cryptography, we trust. We have to trust cryptography. If cryptography isn't working today, nothing that we do works. we have no security in any of our electronic systems. So at some level, we have to trust security. We need privacy without anonymity. Transactions today need to be private. Transactions on credit cards and banks or whatever, they have to be private. I sit on the board of a bank. If I tell you that you're a customer who made a transaction with you, I go to jail. Well, whatever, but I get in trouble, right? We expect our transactions to be private, but we don't like anonymity, right? I want to know who my counterparty is. I want to know what's going on. In general, in society, anonymous isn't great today. In the future, we need audit and compliance, and Concordium, I'm going to present to you today, is the only public permissionless blockchain that assists businesses in complying with these regulations. And regulations are kind of tedious. I'll talk a little bit about this in detail and then go on to a more fundamental concept. This is our global ID. Every single account on Concordium has an ID associated with it, verified by an independent third party. So when you talk about ID and centralized ID, you think about a big database. And databases are horrible, right? We don't like databases. People hack databases. It's all wrong. What we have is ID providers who issue ID, identity objects, we call them, to you. You verify against them with parameters. You choose the person you want to do it, and it's a self-sovereign identity held in your wallet, encrypted. Only you know about that. But when I want to transact with you, I maybe want some information about you. But I don't want to see your entire driver's license or your entire passport or your entire anything. I just want to know, are you over 18? Do you have these competencies? Do you live in the United States or do you not live in the United States, and all of these things? And zero-knowledge proofs allow me to ask you those questions. You answer affirmatively or negatively, and I can be confident in that answer. He says, yes, I'm over 18 because this identity provider, this system says so. And I believe in that system, and you go, okay, that's fine, that's good, off we go. We can do that for businesses, we can do it with persons, we can do it with devices, and we can do it with product, and that's what I want to come to in a second. User decides what's there. You can put it on the chain, but not on chain. Most of this is, of course, off-chain. You don't want your identity on chain for now or for the future, and different policies around that. On-chain identity system, you open an account, you go through it, and an important part of this is our anonymity revocation system, where with the right legal framework, the authorities in a country could go to the identity provider in the country to get the attributes of the person, because we don't just trust in cryptography, somehow we do trust in our legal system. We have to believe in that to some extent to live. What does an identity object look like? Associated with every transaction, there's a table of different things you can put on there. You can't read it, but it's first name and last name and document type and whatever. But where this gets more interesting is when we start to look at more than the identity of people. It gets interesting when we start to look at the identity of other aspects. Self-sovereign identity is one thing. It's permissionless. Our foundation has nothing to do with it aside from basically approving the identity provider in the first place. No honeypots, on-chain, off-chain setup, getting from the smart contract. Where this gets interesting is other attributes beyond your name and address and your passport, right? If you're dealing in the financial system today, KYC isn't just, I got your name and address. So many people in crypto think it is. It's just, your name and address, we're done. No, you have to know what's going on with people. In the financial system today, you have to, when you're buying a derivative or a product or a trading product, you have to, the issuer of that product or the seller of that product needs to be sure that you're competent to buy that product. And today they take you through an interview. I went through one yesterday on the phone, believe it or not, where the guy who said, do you know about this? Do you know about that? Do you know about the other? And I went, yes, 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 yes. Boom. Thank you. Now you can buy this thing. It was great, right? Completely useless. Completely useless, but everybody's boxes were ticked. Imagine if you have the smart contract today that's only accessible by people who've been through a training program. It sounds very formalistic, but if you want to buy this derivative, you have to have been through a training program that you understand this. And a training program could be whatever, a form on the internet, it could be whatever, a certification. You get an identity object for the contract. Not for you, but for the smart contract, it's working the other way around. Sorry, this is for you, your suitability here. We can broaden that into the smart contract itself, right? We could have a smart contract which is regulatory compliant. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just look at this. If I want to issue a derivative today, I have to comply with the rules in this book, EU Securities and Financial Market Regulation, right? This isn't just name and address. This is 1,041 pages of closely written text that everybody like me who issues these things needs to understand. And you can tell by how used it is how much it's been read, right? I mean, who's going to read 1,040 pages of this bullshit? Nobody. But they are going to develop a training course that proves, or a certification system that proves that the smart contract can work this way. And this is one of the challenges within DeFi today, right? One of the major challenges we have is that there isn't really a central counterparty to go after, but the regulators who are entrusted with preserving the financial system, they want to know that it's working properly. And they've got this kind of, how do we do that? Maybe you do it by having approved smart contracts. Maybe you do it with, CertiK, instead of auditing the smart contract for bugs or functionality or whatever, they're auditing it for compliance with the rules. So you could put something like this together. And I think this is really the future of DeFi and a distributed finance system, where so much of the finance system is managed today by people, by individuals who are in rooms doing not a lot, following procedures and making mistakes. Computer code is really good at not making mistakes, at least if it's coded right. So we're not going to get compliance breaches. We're not going to get audit breaches. Put all these together and you can get an environment where smart contracts only functioning with accounts with correct credentials and zero-knowledge proofs to accounts specific to each interaction. So the smart contract doesn't need to know about you. It needs to know you're qualified and that you're able to participate with it. I don't really care that you're called Michael. That doesn't really matter, right? I can be a non-1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't really matter. Just need to know what's going on and are you qualified to do that. And that's the identity framework that we're bringing into Concordium. So when we start talking about an identity blockchain for enterprise, it sounds really like on one side of the boring scale. And then on the other side, we've got probably the most advanced DeFi framework that exists by combining all these elements. We think with Concordium you can comply with the law globally. We think DeFi products coming out of that can do that. And why globally? Because the rules are different in every single country. Just as this book is the EU financial market regulation, there's another book for America, there's another book for Singapore, there's another book for Australia, there's another book for that. I mean, it's hard, right? And you see on here what you're able, when you're running global product, which I've done for years, it's really, really difficult to get compliance or get happy in every country. Using these frameworks, we can do that with Concordium. And I think helping DeFi to comply with the law is the route to the new financial system. It's the brighter, more efficient financial future that was available to all, acceptable to all, which actually goes all the way back to the promise or the wish of Satoshi, of the wish of the Bitcoin white paper, which is, again, what drew most of us into this. Today, we'd like to talk about this a little bit. Final slide here. Concordium Regulated DeFi Lab. We're not just, Concordium's a foundation. We've tokens today, valued $3 billion, the company. We raised money, of course, from investors and whatever. And a lot of that money we're putting into now a regulated DeFi lab. We're developing we want everybody to develop our decentralized, regulatory compliant financial future. We believe in DeFi as the financial future. We're bringing 10 million of grants today funded by the Concordium Foundation and our industrial partners. We've teamed up with a lot of the old-fashioned, I'm afraid, financial institutes, but they're very interested in helping accelerate their own demise by giving money into this system, which is great. Maybe they'll even learn. And we're bringing our own expertise. If you look at the Concordium homepage of the team, the people associated with us, we have a long history in financial services, in legal, in regulatory, and audit. But we also, our founder, Lars Sayer, he was the founder of something called Saxo Bank, which was one of the very first currency traders on the internet way back in 1996 or something. And he sees this. So he's been through the whole journey of running a slightly regulated forex trading business, which was, back in the day, probably more akin to legalized gambling than it was to a financial service. So he's gone all the way through that journey, and now we're starting again at the beginning of this. And we know that journey, and we want to help everybody bring it. And we want people, you guys, everybody else, everybody in the internet, thank you very much, to bring some product leadership, to join us and help to bring the compliant financial future. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. Michael, you completely underestimated that presentation. That was absolutely kick-ass. Excellent presentation.
Time, my friend.
You played a stormer on that. Thank you so much for those great slides. You are the first man that I've ever seen bring a book on stage at a cryptocurrency conference. So there should be an award for that, right?
Who wants it?
How can we find more about Concordium and about you? What's the different links?
Absolutely. Well, if you look up Michael Jackson on the internet, you won't find much about me. You have to be a bit more specific. Hiding in the forest. Concordium.com is the project name. We're based in Switzerland. Operations, of course, all around the world, as these decentralized projects are. Yeah, look on there. Get in touch with us. Join us for the DeFi Lab. I'd really love to do that. We're going to be pushing it much more. Today's the first time we've mentioned it. We're going to have a lot of material about that going forward. We look forward to welcoming people physically into our lab. It's kind of a weird idea, but physically into that. And part of that is going to be having training and people and experts who actually understand about this stuff, who's worked through this stuff for years and years and years and can help put the two worlds together. I think it's absolutely amazingly exciting that we can bring the world of crypto, the world of DeFi, to give cheaper financial products, more efficient financial products, compliant financial products that can satisfy regulators, that can make sure the consumer, the user, is secure. And I think that should be a wish of all of us.
Yeah, that's an awesome mission. Maybe we'll open up the floor for some questions. We have a few minutes. Anyone like to ask Concordium any questions about how the industry, how they see it? Maybe I'll kick it off. This gentleman here. Yep. Yes, sir.
In the case of certification-based usage, will developers who are used to not having to do any of that at the moment just pick the ecosystem or the tool that accompanies a test that they perceive to be the least arduous, excuse me, the least arduous, and therefore it kind of collapses into the same case of the telephone where you have the tick box thing and it becomes as meaningless?
Yeah, of course, because you're always going to take the path of least resistance when you want to develop something, and people will see all this stuff as resistance. It makes it more difficult to get my product out. I think that's the job of a good sort of audit competence or checking competence today is to do that work properly. We see that in other industries. I mean, most of the financial products today are self-certified by the institute that's doing it, and if they don't comply with these 1,040 pages of rules, then they get into trouble. So you have this balance. Of course, you're not going to spend, even the banks today, we're not spending more money than we have to do this stuff, because who wants to gold plate it? It's really complicated. So yes, that's right. But the closer you are to the edge, the more likely you are to be not compliant. But what I dream of at least is our regulators take this stuff and understand that there's a little bit of a different way of working, because you don't really, I want to remove the counterparty side of it to some level. So you've not got the developer. The developer's doing the code. It's certified kind of independently, and then it all works. I think that feels like the right way to do it, and it's not the way they're used to doing it. It's not the way they're used to doing it. I had a discussion last night with somebody on the regulatory side who said, he actually said to me, but who's clearing the transaction, right? Who's clearing the Bitcoin transaction, the crypto transaction, the financial transaction? And we all know that nobody's clearing it. That's what the blockchain does. That's what the consensus of the blockchain does. And that level of knowledge from somebody in the crypto department at a bank, at a research department of a bank whose name I won't embarrass you with, is shocking. So the financial institution side is way behind on this, and we can educate them. But what an opportunity we have. I mean, we've got the whole world of finance, one of the largest industries in the world. We can produce product for these people that will work properly in the future. I think we're building, we're a few of us here, really. This is tiny, and we always say, you know, we're not too early in crypto, and I think that's there.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and an unbelievable opportunity for the builders out there to be that. Have we got any more questions? Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
How does Concordium solve the famous Trilemma problem? I mean, for us to build future finance on blockchain, the blockchain system should be scalable, secure, and decentralized. There is no one actually in the industry still found solution. There are some solutions like sharding, but unless these shards speak to each other, we cannot talk about this building finance on blockchain. So how Concordium bring solution to this problem?
I think it's eminently possible to build finance on top of blockchain. The whole consensus structure is what trust, I mean, the financial system is based upon trust. It's what you have to have. It's what it was built for. Even you go back to the early days in Venice, in Siena, in wherever the original banking, it was based in trust. And in code we trust, as somebody said once. In cryptography we trust. And we have to take those personal trust relationships and build them into the, you know, the system, into the code, we trust in physics. We trust in cryptography. We have to. And I think that allows us to do that. It's a difficult, I mean, it's a journey. For sure it's a journey. We're 10 years into this journey and we've got nowhere in reality. I mean, how much of the world's wealth is in crypto? I mean, none in reality. How much of the world's transactions are going through crypto? Very, very few. And how much of the world's trading is going through crypto, even financial trading? Very little, right? So we've got to build that trust up. But I think that putting these structures together helps towards that trust framework. And that's what we want to do. We want you to be able to trust in us. That would be nice. And build your projects on us.
Any other questions for Michael? Gentleman here at the back.
Hi. You were talking about just now how regulators are really clueless on how to regulate this industry, and this product sounds like it's based on complying with regulation that hasn't been built yet. So how do you think regulators can build that framework without hindering innovation and hindering the future use of crypto and blockchain?
Yeah, I think we've got a great opportunity. I showed at the beginning that slide on MiCA, which is the crypto asset regulation for Europe, which is being developed now. The process of that is that's been written now. That'll come into within Europe into this European directive. The European directive will then be implemented in the member states of the European Union and the EEA and what have you. If we get into the crypto asset framework, the directive, then we're home. Because then it's implemented everywhere else. Yeah, it takes time, but I mean, everything takes time, right? Nothing happens overnight. It reminds me, I come from the telecoms industry, and way back in 2001, we got stuff written into the European Telecoms Directive, just some very few words, very few changes that made it less prescriptive, less technology dependent, more purpose focused, that enabled voice over IP to happen. If we hadn't put those 10 words into that framework in 2001, our lockdown would have been without Zoom, without Teams, without Skype. It would have been really rather boring. Maybe it would have been more fun, I don't know. But, and those few words can influence regulators tremendously by directing the rule. And I think that's the job that we all have to do now, is to try and influence these people to do the right thing. And in Europe, regulators tend to be quite technocratic. They're intelligent. They want the right solution. In America, we heard earlier the chap before, Lorian before, he's talking about the US situation, and they are a lot more political. They're political appointees in some of these environments, and there's a lot more lobbying, a lot more whatever. So we read all this in the newspaper, in our newsletters and things, because they're American focused. But I think the European side is a really nice angle to go at, and I think we should all be doing that, talking to our regulators and saying, educating them about this, but also other concepts around what I'm talking about. Obviously, this isn't, I'm speaking about this. There are other solutions, of course, but we should be doing that. And I'd encourage anybody to do it. It's not hopeless. I would say that we can all do that. I mean, I was doing this European directive stuff 20 years ago when I was a lot younger than I am now, and it's actually quite easy because nobody else bothers. So.
One sec, let me get you the mic so everybody can hear your excellent question. I know you've been waiting.
All right, thank you.
Oh dear.
How you deal with not just the regulators, but also the lobbying efforts that usually go in front of those discussions you have with regulators? I know about one specific project, the Lobby Lobsters, that does it for the US, but I don't know too many projects that do this in Europe.
Yeah, we're very poor at lobbying in Europe. I mean, there isn't, in America there's a whole lobbyist industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. I mean, first time I ever went to America, I was completely shocked, because it was like, you want to see the senator? It's fine, 50 grand. Boom. Hillary's on you can get 10 minutes with Hillary, it costs you 50 grand. It's easy. Nice photo, lovely. You don't get that in Europe, and in fact, if you try and offer them 50 grand, you go to jail in Europe, right? So it's not the right approach. I think you just have to be part of the dialogue. These guys are out there, the technicians, I call it technicians, but the technocrats who are writing the laws, the rules, the regulations, they're in the community, they're listening, they're interested in this stuff. They know it's the future. I mean, they read. They're not idiots. They're certainly not idiots. They're very, very intelligent people, well-trained, legally background, financial background. I mean, you read this stuff, it's kind of boring, but, I mean, it's not unintelligent. And I think involving a dialogue between two intelligent people is a really, really good way to do it. But there isn't a formal lobby organization. Maybe we should have that. Maybe we should have a European crypto lobby framework. We're weak at it in general as an industry. Thank you.